Hello and welcome to the United Bias, a new weekly podcast that's focusing on all things football with a slight bias on Manchester United, hence the name. We hope that you will be joining us on this journey. And accompanying me is Slide Nukurau. Hello, Slide. Welcome.
Kieran, how's it? How are you doing?
Good, bud. Good. Excellent. Excited to have you here and getting this venture off the ground. Also accompanying us on this journey is Ruben Cronier. Some say he's a top red. Hello, Ruben. Welcome to the pod.
Hey, Kieran. Hey, Slide. Very keen to get the ball rolling. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of watching of football. So, yeah, how about talking about football for a change?
Only top reds, yeah.
Only top reds. Only top reds. Okay.
From my perspective, Slide's on top, so he must be the top red.
Someone is always on top. Okay, guys. So let's kick things off. A wonderful 1-0 victory at the high-flying Bournemouth under Gary O'Neill. Not to be sniffed at. Slide, happy with the performance?
Happy with the result, Kieran, I'll be honest. Just not the performance. I think it was another lackluster, boring from a performance standpoint, but obviously we will take the 3 points. I think the boys of the past couple of weeks have I don't know whether to call it fatigue or what, but yeah, it just hasn't been convincing football. I think we'll just take the 3 points and move on. 2 more games to go now.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation, Ruben. If I throw this to you, I mean, 1 or 2 games might be considered a blip in terms of performance levels, but what we're beginning to see here is perhaps a trend of the same dour performances, inability to create chances, and more importantly, as a result, score goals. What's your take on what we've seen in Erik ten Hag's team after a really impressive first few months in the season?
So, I was sitting, and even before this performance, getting a little bit hot under the collar about our goal scoring, and in particular, when people started to take notice how badly we're underperforming our XG, and I mean, whether we consider ourselves stat merchants or not, and whether to pay attention to that or not is obviously a question. But when I went back and checked, I mean, it was something like a run of 1 game in 15 where we had outperformed what we were expecting to achieve in terms of number of goals, and I think that's, it's hardly news that we need somebody to be putting these goals in the back of the net, but it's not even necessarily a creativity issue, although even that has dried up kind of in the last few weeks. What to pin that to in particular is difficult. I mean, we've had Anthony Marshall's come back and he's actually now getting some game time, and we thought maybe that would be the cure, and that hasn't been the cure. Is it maybe is the before and after line the Carabao Cup final? I mean, maybe it is. It kind of feels like it. I'm not quite sure what the take is on that, but yeah, definitely we need, as if we didn't know, we need someone to be putting those goals in the back of the net and not wasting some of the creative talents that we've got sitting in the midfield.
I'll take Ruben's point there, Slide, and I'll take it one step further and say that, well, it seems peculiar that a team that boasts a midfielder, Bruno Fernandes and Christian Eriksen, who if nothing are but creative forces historically, seem to struggle to create chances. And yes, while we're not scoring goals, the worrying trend of us taking long-range shots, and I'm sure we've all been frustrated in recent weeks with the increasing, whether it's been Casemiro, Bruno, Anthony, all just, at any given opportunity, and even Tony Marshall against Bournemouth this weekend, with just, infuriating with a few of these long shots. And speaking of a stat merchant, yeah, Anthony, speaking of stat merchants, yeah, I mean, low XG chances, really frustrating. So we're flattered to deceive, and at the end of a game, you might see 20 shots, but what are the quality of those shots, and why do we seem bereft of ideas?
Yeah, so I'll go back to last season, maybe the season before that. All right, I think last season our biggest problem was the midfield. So we got in Casemiro, we got in Eriksen, all right, and we were scoring a lot of goals on the counter. Obviously, prior to Ollie leaving and then Anthony came to come in and all that stuff, but we took a lot from the counter attack playing football, right? Teams that knew how to frustrate United were playing on the low block because we weren't able to do anything for teams that against teams that sat back. Now we've got creative players. Eriksen comes in, Casemiro's got long range passes, so does Eriksen, and Bruno still does his thing, right? But it's that final third or the final pass that is not there, or it does go, but it's not being converted. So it looks like the problem has somewhat shifted from the midfield to being the very obvious front row. And I'm not talking like a rugby freaking commentator now, but more like your strikers. But yeah, it's extremely frustrating that you've got Tony Martial. Yes, Rashford's more a wide player, but Tony Martial is your centre forward. He's coming in. He's not positionally. He's not playing where he's meant to be in terms of where he's meant to be on the field as a nine. He's coming out wide. He's coming to fetch the ball. He's trying to play like Harry Kane without the goals. Let's put it that way. And yeah, it's been very, very frustrating. And never mind him being out for practically 3/4 of the season as well with injury. But I think with regards to the game itself and our inability to convert goals, I think it's become very blatant that we need a finisher, someone who knows to run into the right spaces, someone who needs to be in the right place at the right time. A lot of the time, Bruno makes a killer pass, but it's a killer pass with the right person on the end of it. And that's essentially, what we actually need to solve. I think it needs to be a primary solve for United this summer, without a doubt.
Ruben.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm sort of wondering, I mean, based on what you said, it's a season ago, or ish, under Oli, we were, absolutely tucking away those chances on the counter. I mean, we were outright lethal. Teams were scared to sort of get expansive against us, and obviously that's when we then struggled with the low block, and that's when the goals dried up. But we never struggled to score on the counter. And I wish I could put a number to it, but I mean, it feels this season like we've had a lot of chances where we've had good breaks and people just aren't able to sort of put the free player away. They're taking on a shot when they should be passing, or they're when they should be taking on the player, they're doing a backwards pass or taking the safer option. I mean, where's that gone? Where's that ability suddenly evaporated to? It's really weird.
It's gone to jail, buddy. Mason Greenwood.
Yeah.
I mean, you say it in jest, but losing Mason Greenwood and then Cristiano, who, of course, they didn't expect to lose him when we did. Things didn't go according to plan there. That is obviously something that's significant. The concern that I have is that while it's easy to say, well, we need a striker, and that's obviously, it's evident to anyone watching the game. When the likes of Brighton have Danny Welbeck in the year 2023 leading the line for large parts of the season, and they're able to get goals from all areas of the field, it seems like an easy excuse and to say, well, we need a striker. And I feel like some questions need to be asked about all those attacking players, apart from Rashford, who seems to be having one of his best seasons or his best season ever. The rest of them need to be held accountable. And I think it's more than just not goals. But I think one of the points, Ruben, you made the point, I think it's about movement. I think you touched on movement and running into spaces, running into channels, creating those opportunities for those creative players to perhaps find the pass to put you through. But if your forward, like Martial, is not occupying the box and is drifting out wide, where already got Rashford lying up there or occupying that space, and they're getting in the way of each other, and no one's making that position and being that focal point, that may be something of a concern. But I think we'll hope that another transfer window and a few more months of Carrington, his squad, Erik ten Hag, is able to turn this around. On a positive note, David De Gea wins the Golden Glove Award, which is quite remarkable achievement for the veteran, the multi-time player of the year. What do you have to say about David De Gea, and what a big achievement is this, considering where we were just before Ten Hag joined?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, congratulations to David on that accolade. I don't know whether to agree that it's a massive achievement in the bigger scheme of things, right? So yes, 17 clean sheets and counting. There's an opportunity to get 2 more clean sheets, which would be great to bring that up to 19. That's now 50-50. It's half the season if he gets that. So half the Premier League season, that is, and that'll be awesome. But geez, he's had some ridiculous goals go past him, and by his own doing, by the way. Not to say that someone has done a moomish in front of him, we can sort of talk about that, and I think in another episode with regards to that. But he's had a few blinders. Like he's done an injustice to himself and an entire team with some of the performances. I can think of 2 goals against Brentford where he literally either picked the wrong pass or he fluffed up completely, and that's essentially to his own demise. And we all know that could have been clean sheet number 20 because if the goal hadn't been scored in the first place, the team maybe would have fought for a nil or draw, or maybe a smash and grab 1-0. But yeah, it is something to celebrate, I guess, in terms of an award from a Premier League perspective. But yeah, I think there needs to be some serious reflection in and around some of the mistakes that he's making, and I think that he's made. Sorry, but like with all the rumors going around about Ten Hag looking for a different number one or a new number one, it needs to be a very massive cause for concern. And for him, in the back of his head, needs to understand that it might not be those 2 or 3 bloopers that happen, but yeah, it's now time for a change based on the model and the role of the goalkeeper in the modern day football.
Ruben, is Slide overreacting? Is he getting all Football Analytics FC here, trying to throw out David De Gea, throwing him under the bus? The man's just won the Golden Glove Award, multiple-time United Player of the Year, our last surviving Fergie's last season when we won the Premier League, and Slides basically, for the sounds of it, wants to throw David De Gea out.
Yeah, on
Get him
on
out
the
the
trash
door.
heap with you, Dave. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
what do you think
I'm
about this?
I'm
This
shocked and appalled, Slide. This is just not Manchester United fan behavior. This is it's top rate behavior. But no,
Look,
look,
I'm a tough crowd, tough crowd here.
yeah, tough to please. Golden gloves just aren't enough for you. No, like I mean, I've always been maybe stands a strong word for it, but definitely always been a fan of Dave. And I mean, again, the stat merchants will tell you his save percentages sit about average in the Premier League. I think even to the eye test, his passing and distribution is not there. But then again, when you look at the eye test on his saves, and I mean, there've been, I mean, yes, there've been some where he's dropped some absolute clangers and possibly single-handedly lost the game, but there's certainly been a couple, and I think this is maybe that legacy of the Fergie era, that moment player that he sometimes is when we're clinging on for that 1-0 or that 2-1, and then he produces a string of 3 or 4 massive saves, and it gets the defense G'd up, and it kind of generates that impression that all is all is back to Dave in his heyday. So I mean, he certainly has that ability, and I mean, I don't think there's zero value in that legacy aspect of actually still having someone in the squad who's walked the walk in days gone by. So I mean, it's a bit of a difficult call, but I mean, having said all that, and as I say, I'm sort of coming out to bat a little bit for Dave here, because ultimately, if you score 1-0, 1-0, 0-7, okay, it looks really bad on the eye, but it's still more points than 1-0, whatever, 1-1 and 1-1 again. That's 6 points v4. So clean sheets win games, and as Dave has shown, I mean, 18 clean sheets gives you 17 gives you a good base to work with for clawing your way up the league, even if not a great team. But okay, and here comes my but. Look, I have to kind of trust it. I think Erik ten Hag is looking to build a certain type of system, and when it boils down to it, it just Dave is too much of an old dog to learn the new trick of being able to sort of play smoothly out the back and sort of be pinging passes around. And I think he's been more exposed, especially since we've lost Martinez at the back. I think Martinez was a really safe. It's looked a little bit better since Varane's got back, but yeah, I mean, without Martinez, if you look at some of those distribution stats, I mean, he's often our highest number of passes in a game, and even sometimes very high numbers of progressive passes, and I think that's a role that we've been missing. And then when you ask Dave to play more of that role, and he doesn't have the comfort blanket of Martinez to distribute, it looks a lot worse. So yeah, I kind of probably have to give the benefit of the doubt to Ten Hag here and say, yeah, maybe it's time to move on. But then again, we've also seen the issues of having 2 number 1 players in a team, with him and Henderson that season. So tricky call.
Yes, and particularly when the huge sums of money that both of them are on for by goalkeeper standards, with De Gea being actually one of the highest paid players in the league currently, it's a difficult decision. But the two of you sound like Ed Woodward to Louis van Gaal after the day we won the FA Cup final. Heartless, the two of you. Anyway,
Well done, but don't let the door hit you on the way out.
exactly. Moving on to onto something more positive. It hasn't been
Kieran,
a good.
sorry, before we move on, I've got a question for you. Why does Edward Woodward have 4 D's in his name?
Please enlighten us.
Because otherwise his name would be Ewar Woowar.
The quality content that you come here for. So this is what you will have in store for yourself, dear listener. Quality content by Ruben. You don't need to go to the Bioscope or any other of the comedy venues anywhere in the world, really. You come right here.
No, come to
Thank you.
United, guys.
On to something positive to finish on United. Slide. We've got an opportunity now. Basically, you have locked up top 4. We just need a draw, essentially, out of our remaining 2 fixtures. But we are at home, where it's been a bit of a fortress this season. A home against Chelsea on Thursday, and then finish the season with Fulham visiting us. How do you feel about those fixtures? And do you feel positive that we're going to end it on a good note with a couple of convincing wins at home?
Short answer, no. I'm not convinced. Yeah, and purely based on what I said earlier. Like these boys have been, playing in playing some unconvincing football. Biggest game, obviously, in this particular instance, is the one that we're playing on Thursday, which is against Chelsea. We actually don't have a very good record against Chelsea. When I say very good, I mean a very good winning record against them. Yes, all we need is a draw to secure the top 4. Do I feel we will draw or win this game? No, not really. I'm not entirely convinced. The next game after that, which is the last game of the season, is Fulham. Do I think we will win that game? Again, no. That one maybe we'll come up with a draw, and I think it's purely based on the last encounter we had with Fulham. Trivic got sent off, and the manager also got a card, and he was sidelined for a couple of weeks. So they're going to come out all guns blazing, with a point to prove, particularly Mitrovic. I feel for David De Gea and his clean sheets. But if you're asking me this, after the Carabao Cup final, I would have told you now we're winning straight. No questions asked. There's 6 points in the bag. We're good. We're fighting for 3rd place. That's essentially what I'll be saying. But at this point in time, sheesh, yeah, the last couple of weeks have been pretty painful. It doesn't help also that our top goal scorer is sidelined. We don't know when he's coming back. So it's a bit of a dull moment. Who's going to start? Who's going to get amongst the goals now? Martial obviously is not scoring. He walked off the pitch sulking the other day because he got taken off. So it's a bit of a difficult one. And I mean, Bruno would obviously be the next one to probably step up to score goals. But yeah, he didn't have a great game himself on Saturday as well. So it makes you wonder where these goals are going to come from. So I'm a bit on the fence about whether or not we're going to get 6 points, maybe 2. 2 will be great. But yeah, my gut is saying we'll get 1 point out of the last 2 games.
I mean, Ruben, help us here. Help us understand. Is Slide being glass half empty? Is there
I
hope
mean,
for some
I think his
optimism?
glass is just plain empty there. Yeah.
It sounds like he doesn't even have a glass. Actually,
He doesn't even have a glass. Raise one if you have it, but I'm not seeing it anywhere.
I mean, we do have the horse off. We do have the horse after all. I mean, surely the goals will come with Wout Weghorst. Ruben?
That's what I was.
How many goals has he scored? Just humor me here in the Premier League. Sorry, for Man United. Never mind his parent club.
I mean, you could argue that he's saving it up. He's saving it up for Chelsea and Fulham.
I actually hope he's saving it up for City. But anyway, yeah, let's carry on.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Wout owes us a goal or 2. That is for sure. Look, but I mean, he had he had one pretty good shot against not Brighton. I'm getting my Bournemouth now. I mean, look, the guy, I think he's cursed. I think that probably has to be my ultimate conclusion, and probably why I mean, other than the 0 Premier League goals and 2 slightly wonky sort of cup goals, I think he is just cursed. He sometimes gets in good positions. I think he's got pretty good movement, and for a big fella especially. But even when he manages a turn, snaps off that shot, you think goal would bound, and a defender will materialize out of nowhere. The keeper his foot will grow an extra foot. I just don't understand it. Like, and I think it's that kind of Diego Forlan thing where even if he eventually chipped in with a goal or two, it's just I don't think the floodgates are ever going to open there in particular. That said, I do think. Look, there's no way we're not getting that point for fourth. I think even the most empty glass of us can see that. But that's it. I mean, I sort of have a slight inkling that we, as long as Ten Hag doesn't rest everybody and field a complete bottom string team, I think in at least one of those games the floodgates might open. We might sort of see a sort of convincing performance to round out the season. I think we almost need that to carry some level of confidence into the FA Cup final. So, I think, hopefully it's a matter of these players kind of realizing they need to play themselves, into the form to carry through to that game. Look, and again, if we can't put at least a couple past this Chelsea team at home, we've been strong at home all season. Chelsea have been just horrendous, as we know. I don't see that we. This might be the chance to break the streak of 0-0s. I think finally, and I think it's probably likely to happen. Whether that's Wout chipping in with a goal or Bruno treating us to his annual hat trick, I don't know, but I don't think it's all doom and gloom.
For my fantasy, I hope he does chip in with the hat trick. That man, hey.
Yeah, look, he does play a little deep these days. I've got to say that I love me a Bruno goal, and they've become a little rarer. I mean, of course, as I've said many times to you guys, our squad's got blood on their hands. He's about, a whole really good season's worth of assists down on where he should be, just on his own. Never mind that he's already got a decent number of assists. So yeah, feel bad for the guy.
Okay, and with that, I think the first time in football commentary, someone has attributed Wout's dry spell to a curse, dear listener. So you've heard it here first. We've got to the root cause of why Wout Weghorst doesn't score goals. It's actually a curse.
It's a literal hyena buried under his front porch.
Okay. So this could harken back to our friend Mr. Pogba.
Might be.
Famous hyenas, yeah. Okay, moving on, and unfortunately, a topic that we probably don't want to cover, but we're obliged to. Arsenal going to Nottingham Forest and bottling it by losing again. That gave Manchester City another league title. So that being said, 3 in a row, outstanding achievement for Manchester City with possibly the treble in the not too distant future. It's on the cards. Slide, where does this achievement and what do you have to say about this Manchester City team and what they've achieved thus far? Because they look, especially after that Real Madrid game, they looked imperious at home recently.
Look, I mean, Man City, this is what, their 5th one in 6 seasons. So they've only not won it once in the last 6 seasons. That's massive. And I think the only one they didn't win was the one that those Scousers won during COVID, when the season should have just actually been stopped right bang when we won top of the league, right? It's it's one of those. But yeah, I think City have done very, very well. I have to take my hat off to them, particularly, the way they just stuck to what they needed to do in the Premier League, in any sort of competition they were actually playing to date. They just stuck to what they do. Arsenal then thought they were running with this thing, but they're the true testament to making use of your games in hand. I think Man United could take a page or two from Man City's making use of your games in hand book. But yeah, I think City at the moment they are on fire. And I'm sad to say this, but I don't think Inter has a chance in the Champions League final. So that's going to be their last trophy of the potential 3 that they potentially could get, given where we are. FA Cup, if the boys come with the derby attitude of old, we could upset these guys. And, it is a possibility. But with the way City are playing, geez, yeah, it's a very difficult one, this one, to call. But, but just to speak from a high level standpoint, the way Man City is being run as a football club from a footballing standpoint is admirable in terms of how they plan the players that they want. They've got three top-notch players for each position. Pep can pick and choose who he wants, and you're gonna get the same level of output. The only hindrance in most instances is match fitness. But in terms of skill set and ability to deliver on what the manager or coach wants them to output, guys are doing what they meant to be doing. And it's coming from the top, director of football in place, doing the recruitment and ensuring that contracts are negotiated and all the like. And they've got a plan. And they execute on it. I don't know what to say about Man United in terms of that when it comes to having a plan and how it actually gets executed. But I think, City are on a roll at the moment. And that's up to them. Congratulations to them. And hopefully they don't get the treble. But well done on the three-peat that they've just pulled off on the Premier League.
Yes, something that, of course, Fergie did twice, Manchester United. And also the 5 titles in 6 years, again, only been done by Liverpool previously in the 80s and obviously with Fergie as well. So a hell of an achievement. Ruben, you don't have such glowing words for City and their achievement. I feel like you have a slightly different take on this achievement. There's a caveat, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I even struggle to say words like, well done to them. And I think, it's probably no surprise. I mean, I tend to find this, to a large extent, the whole concept generally of sort of state ownership of clubs is sort of a bit of a tricky concept. I do kind of wish we could all sit with the German model of fan ownership, whether that's realistic or not. It just kind of feels more in the spirit of what sports and sports teams are meant to be. But that said, even more so than that broad concept, and I probably can't fight too hard against that, given that we might be one of those clubs soon as well. But I think particularly, basically every City achievement is almost tainted in a way that you just can't take it seriously, really. I mean, you've got reams and reams of allegations that have now come out, and this isn't the first one. I mean, as you guys would know, that sort of had these financial doping sort of charges previously before UEFA, and with in fact quite a lot of evidence as well. I mean, I think would have been a pretty convincing case, but the issue there, of course, is that UEFA at least have a sort of a time bar provision in their own rules. So, and as a lawyer, I mean, that's one thing I know is usually pretty ironclad, and that you can't get around. If things say that evidence beyond 5 years or charges going back more than 5 years can't be considered, or whatever the time period is, I forget. Nothing you can do about that, So it's not that I think it was wrong. I mean, certainly I think that ultimately CAS probably ruled correctly in upholding that City can't be found guilty of those charges that UEFA brought. Probably correct. But I mean, I think it's all pretty, I mean, I hate to say, it was just a technicality, but in this, I mean, it was a technicality. It's got nothing to do with the merits of how guilty they were, which I think is why the big news with the charges coming out of the FA, of course, is they don't have an equivalent time bar provision. That means they can roll back the investigation, roll back the evidence as kind of far as they need to prove the case that they need to prove. So if we look at the types of charges that put forward, I mean, they're all quite significant. I mean, it's things like overstating the amount of sponsorship. It's under the table deals to pay managers. It's undisclosed fees in respect of transfers. It's stuff that when you say financial doping, that's kind of what it is. And they've skirted on the edge always of financial fair play. And when you kind of look at, if those charges do pan out to be true, we don't know, or if they will find a sort of valid defense to those. They're simply just not playing a fair game. One thing that I can be fairly passionate about as a United fan is to say we really we paid the iron price for our success as well. We won kind of the right way. We kind of our success drove our further success, allowed us to invest. Our actual legitimate global fan base is what gave us that financial muscle to sort of be able to be buying guys like Rio back in the day for record fees then. So that really was earned on the pitch. We earned our success, and it just doesn't feel like City earned, as beautiful as the football is that they play, they sort of didn't earn it in a legitimate way, and it makes it really hard for me to recognize those achievements in any kind of positive light.
That being said, I guess one of the concerns is that Everton were also charged, I think a year ago now, not the same charges, but there are charges about FFP concerns with Everton. And I know that actually there was announced that there's a case being brought against the Premier League by a bunch of affected clubs, Burnley being one of them who were relegated last year. And this hasn't been resolved. What does this mean, and what are the implications going forward, I guess, from a legal perspective? Because this could possibly go on and be drawn out for years. And what does this mean for all these teams that have finished second behind Manchester City over the years, or second to Cups, or managers that were fired from other teams because they didn't meet the objectives? What does this mean, and where could this go?
Yeah, I mean, it's look. I mean, obviously, in terms of the rules as they sit there, there are a lot of different potential penalties, and I mean, it is things like points deductions, both for current season retrospective points deductions. It could be expulsion from the league. It could just be fines. It could be it could also be transfer bans or moratoriums. Now, some of those we've seen before. Obviously, not so much general FA pyramid, but we know that sort of some major clubs in Spain have been hit with the transfer bans. We've obviously seen things that have happened to Juventus in Italy, which is probably the one case that shows you, well, you kind of think to yourself sometimes, well, is this ever going to actually happen? Are they going to get charged? Are they going to get dock points? And yeah, I mean, we have seen examples of that actually happen in another major European league to another major European team. So it's not outside the realm of, or it's not unthinkable, put it that way, that these charges could actually result in that kind of sanction. And of course, if it's retrospective points deductions, that has some pretty significant effects on who's won the league in days gone by. What gets a little tricky, I mean, if you think about West Ham some time back, you remember there was a lot of sketchiness around the Mascherano and Tevez transfers, and I forget who was relegated on the final day because of their contribution. In fact, I think they beat and Tevez scored against United on the final day for West Ham, and that, I forget who got someone relegated, and they brought a case to the FA. And I didn't really think that. I think that maybe resulted in a fine. I don't think it ever. It's not like they got re-promoted back to the Premier League. So it's difficult to know whether they'll take an action that actually the FA's got the kind of minerals, as it were, to take away a title from City.
Yeah, it's tricky, and I guess it's going to be a long road before we get any sort of resolution to this. So I guess it's well done, City, but is it really?
Asterisk.
On the other end of the table, as we highlighted, Forest beat Arsenal to secure another year in the Premier League. Slide. Quite an achievement by Forest, given the absolute turmoil at the club and the sheer amount of signings. They probably, similar to Chelsea on a lower scale, probably don't know who's even registered at that club. They've got so many players.
Look, it's one of those. But yeah, Nottingham Forest done really well to stay there. I think what's interesting is the actual battle, of the relegation. Who's going to survive? Who's dropping? Who's going to survive? So you've got your usual mid-table to top six. Everton is in the mix there. Leicester in the mix there. Leicester's a former Premier League winner. Everton, now they're struggling. But it's going to be interesting to see who actually does make the cut. I also hope, where's West Ham sitting in this entire sort of debacle? I'm actually wondering, because obviously they are through to the conference final.
Yeah, West Ham are through to the Conference League final, and they are secure. They're safe.
Not by much. Okay.
Yeah, but they're clear. As it stands, as you say, it's between Southampton are gone, and it's between two off. Everton, Leeds, and Leicester will be joining them. Everton, as you say, a gigantic football club, a club with history and tradition, and traditionally one of the big clubs in England, and well before the Sugar Daddies arrived and transformed Man City and Chelsea, Everton were the club challenging Liverpool in the 80s. It wasn't anyone else. It was Everton, really. So would be shocking if it goes down. Ruben, what's your take? Who are the two that are going to join Southampton to get relegated?
Well, am I correct that there's some live scoring on right now, and it's Newcastle 0, Leicester 0 as we record this, and the goal isn't forthcoming from Leicester. I'm going to pick Leicester. probably as the ones. It's almost unthinkable for me for Everton somehow to go down. I mean, I know we're sort of trawled through the archives, and it's the 50-51 season, the last time they were relegated, and they're one of a fairly small number of clubs that have never been relegated from the Premier League. It seems to be quite a shame to see a stat like that get broken. But I just struggle to understand what's happened to, and not even Southampton wasn't that many years ago under Koeman that they were sort of, also knocking at the door of Europe. Everton perennial, Leicester, and then those are all the teams that really, call it 6-7 years ago, were the ones that you're thinking they're what Brighton is now. And kind of it makes you worry. Does it mean, like, really the only way to sustainably break into the top six is to get somebody to come in and sort of line your sort of pocket a major buyout? But yeah, I mean, to roll back to your original question, yeah, I mean, I think Leeds are done for, of course. Probably Leicester. I mean, it's an easy call to make, given, as I say, the current status of the game and their current opposition, or the team they have to face right now. But yeah, I think that's probably what it's going to be. Leicester, Leeds, Southampton.
Slide, please go ahead.
Yeah, look, I think Ruben pretty much sums it up there. I'm actually inclined to agree. For the first time, we're agreeing on something on this podcast, by the way, Ruben. Yeah, Leeds.
Well, now I think it's Everton, actually.
Oh gosh, yeah. So I think, yeah, Leeds, Leicester, and Southampton definitely to go down.
It's interesting because if you look at those teams that you're mentioning, Southampton and Leicester, to a degree, similar. A bit of analytics FC teams, clever recruitment historically, getting young players, buying young players succeeds, sell them on for hefty fees. If you go back to Southampton, as you say, under Poch, under Koeman, all those bright talents that went to Liverpool and elsewhere. And similarly with Leicester, the Mahrezes and Kantes, etc. Maguire even. They had a knack of doing that. And the problem, of course, becomes is what happens when you have a little bit of a bad streak with your recruitment and suddenly gambits that you've taken on the youngsters don't work out. And I guess that's the one hand. You've got the Leicester Southampton angle. And on the other hand, you've got Everton, who are basically run like Manchester United on a slightly smaller scale, on a much smaller scale. Reckless spending, no clear strategy, just hiring and firing managers, and just completely different approaches. But Everton might stay up, they might not. But it'll be interesting to see how this transpires and what this says, because for every Brighton and Brentford at the top end of analytics FC, if you will, you've got now the end of the cycle of your Leicesters and Southampton. So it's precarious situation, and it just shows you that one or two bad decisions, not replacing outgoing players adequately, and this is the mess you can end up with.
And I mean, Leicester, I mean, as I think surprised as we all were that Jamie Vardy just suddenly turned into a goal scoring machine at the whatever ripe old age of 27 or something like that. I mean, I think they got a bit lucky with that fluke and almost depended on it a little bit too much. And now that the goals are finally dried up again at age 34 or whatever it may be, yeah, I think you're right. They there was a miss from them to not really find sort of adequate replacement. And you have to, Tielemans, okay, I mean, I think we were all really excited about him not that long ago, and not putting in the performances, I believe now, where are they finding those Mahrezes, those kind of players that just dried up? And I mean, I don't know if that's a backroom personnel thing, and if that's something that you can sort of level at Southampton, where the kind of rot creeped in. But I mean, even Leeds, I mean, I know not this time around, but the previous time around, I mean, I think maybe not so much smart recruitment, but certainly deep pockets kind of allowed them to push, and then a couple of bad buys here or there, and next thing you're relegated a season or two later. It's very fine lines if you don't have the pockets to keep going.
Yeah, that being said, I do think that on the example of Leeds, for instance, they did back the manager and invested in a lot of supposedly high potential young players. Tyler Adams, Weston McKennie from Juve, Sinistera from, I think he was PSV, he was highly rated. A lot of these young guys, and they just, for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out. Playing, essentially trying to do a variation of the old Red Bull model. Going from Bielsa to Marsh. So anyway, very interesting. We'll keep our eye on that and indeed see if your predictions are correct, or if somehow Everton are going to be dragged back into this. Moving on to another subject, and a rather unfortunate, rather serious subject, was the ongoing racist abuse that's happening in Spain, and it's almost leaves one lost for words. That in the year 2023, not only are these incidents happening, but it seems to be getting worse and worse. And just this, I think, is sort of the cherry on the cake, with the whole stadium essentially chanting "monkey" towards a player. I mean, I don't understand. I don't have the words to understand this, and I'm really trying to control myself to not curse on the show right now, because this poor guy has been subjected. If you watch those videos, the most horrid thing. Can you imagine being in a stadium where 40, 50,000 people are chanting just pure vile coming out at him? And I feel like it's a failure both on his teammates, on his coach to a degree, even though Carlo did come out and try and back him. But at what point do you just walk off and say, you know what, this is not worth it? We can't do this, because he's not the only black player on that team, by the way. You've got multiple players on both sides, and it doesn't make sense. And until something serious is done, nothing will change in the culture of, I guess, Spain. And you see this in Italy as well. Slide, I'm going to throw this to you first. What's your sort of reaction seeing and hearing what's going on in Spain with Vinny Jr. in particular?
Yeah, I think it's really sad, and I think the sad part is that yes, you point out very clearly that it's 2023 and this kind of stuff is happening. I think if you go back 20 years, probably same thing happened with Samuel Eto'o, and 20 years on, we're still having the same thing. Obviously, this nothing. You can see that nothing is changing or has changed. It's just something that just gets swept under the rug, and then all of a sudden it accumulates enough dust that it now becomes so prevalent. And yeah, I'm really not. It's not impressed, particularly by La Liga and how they're handling the situation. Yes, the Premier League has this whole no racism stance that they're sort of trying to push, and they've gone and done branding and the likes. Has that gotten rid of racism? No, but they're trying to send a message. If there is a racist slur from a player on pitch for any reason whatsoever, there's going to be repercussions. Does the same happen in the Liga? I don't think so. And quite frankly, I think it's something that something that needs to be sort of addressed, and it's something that FIFA needs to step in for what it's worth, and sort of come in with the big boy pants and be like, okay, listen here, this is enough now. These are the sections that we need to sort of put into place and make it a global thing, and that's it.
I think your response is very measured, and I just find it very difficult to keep composed. I mean, I'm actually flying to Valencia tomorrow, and I'm meant to be going to Valencia to watch Valencia Espanyol on Sunday. Now, I have mixed feelings about that. Will I get, I don't know, will I get randomly attacked or abused there because I'm not the same skin tone as the people of Valencia? And you shouldn't have that feeling. You shouldn't have to worry about these sort of things as a human being. And I feel for these guys, and I feel like something needs to be done. And I feel like Real Madrid should have really walked off as a sign of solidarity. Moving on to our last topic, and huge news out of Germany, with Bayern Munich losing 3-1 to RB, Rasenball as they're called, and although you may figure out what that actually stands for. And Dortmund winning 3-0 at Augsburg, meaning that Dortmund take the lead with one game to go. Ruben, Dortmund are in a position to win the league as long as they win their final game in hand. What does this mean? And can you just sum up for us what a crazy turn of events this is?
Yeah, it's strange because I mean I think the certainties in life, in South Africa certainly the certainties in life are sort of death and load shedding, and I think the third certainty is Bayern Munich winning the Bundesliga. It's sort of been like absolute clockwork. So I mean, I don't know how much of an existential crisis it needs to be for Bayern Munich, but certainly I mean I think it's actually really important to not have leagues that are just so utterly dominated by single clubs. I mean, we see in the Scottish League, obviously been an issue there, PSG in the French league, but I mean, this has been a particularly bad instance of it. So I mean, to me, it's really heartening to see, and it's I mean, Dortmund have I think gone about it in a lot of ways the right way. Some phenomenal recruitment, exciting young players, and heck, I mean, to do it a season after losing the best young goal scorer in probably the world for not even a particularly big fee, and I mean, not just losing Haaland, but of course losing their replacement in Holo who came in. It's an incredibly impressive achievement. I don't know who else can follow their model effectively, certainly not us, but great achievement.
Slide, on the other hand, Bayern Munich fired the brightest young coach in the world, subsequently replaced him with Tommy Tuchel, get knocked out of the German Cup, get knocked out of the Champions League, and are about to squander the league. How much of a blunder was this by the Bayern board? And is Thomas Tuchel even at risk, as crazy as that sounds? Is he at risk possibly of losing his job as well?
I think that was a total knee-jerk reaction from the board and the people that run the club. They should have kept Nagelsmann on. He was on a flyer. Obviously, he had that blooper. I think it was 2 games that were unfortunate, and then they reacted to those games. And it's one of those where you then start questioning whether there's a level of trust with whoever you've got in charge. Thomas Tuchel, I don't know. Hey, like, if the playbook of knee-jerk reactions is to go by anything that they've done now, I think then they're probably going to get rid of him at the end of the season. So he's probably gone by Sunday or Monday. He's probably gone, and they're going to get someone else if that is anything to go by, because 10 seasons in a row, and then you fire someone who's been killing it, and then all of a sudden you expect to, in the hope that you're still going to make it year 11, and he doesn't do it. Yeah, get rid of him. That's essentially what's going to happen. That's what I think.
Slide being incredibly trigger happy, firing De Gea, firing Thomas Tuchel. Look, I don't want to be like, this feels like a Charlie Brown type of moment. I've seen this before. I've seen it where Bayern slip up. I think Dortmund are going to run away with it, and they somehow stumble. So let's wait and see next week if they actually get the job done. But yes, I think we've come to the end of our very first show. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining me. And thank you, listener, for accompanying us on this journey. And we hope to see you for many more in the future. Bye-bye.